Daria Grover, Morphlink and Saintless. On the first, join the Sleepyheads, Slick Visor and Charlie Woods for a night of indie bliss. Then a huge local lineup fronted by Woolworths Flu Shot on the 8th. Indie icon Bob Evans on the 9th, and Merry Hexmas, a massive lineup of metal including Permafog, Threats and Smug Anime Face on the 15th. Then dance into 2024 with Judy's Ruby Slipper Ball on the 31st. See the full lineup at alterhobart.com.au. Alter is a proud Edge Radio sponsor.
There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
Right, welcome to Media Mothership here on Edge Radio Studios, broadcasting out of Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. On Media Mothership, we explore how media can shape our understanding of the world around us. We unpack some bizarre case studies of media phenomena and look at how they matter, why they matter, how they're possibly affecting even something as bold as to say reality. We're streaming, of course, over multiple platforms, as is our wont. We're on edgeradio.org.au. We're on YouTube, streaming live, as well as Twitch. You can find us just by searching Media Mothership. If you do want to reach out and message us with your own examples or thoughts of some of these phenomena as we talk about them, you can SMS us directly in the studio on 0488811707 or drop us a message on the YouTube or Twitch chat, and we'll certainly respond to it. So I'm your host today, Dr. Craig, and co-host Taylor might be around at some point. Today's topic, we're picking up where we stopped off last week, which was looking at video game adaptations and some bizarre media phenomena linked to that. What I might do, hold off on some of the news and go straight into
Survivors
a little bit of that, little soundbite from a video game, which I think presents a really interesting example of adaptation, right? Taking one media source and adapting it to a new medium. Last week we looked at some ideas used by theorists like Henry Jenkins and Dana, and we're going to apply some of those ideas today, in particular looking at the horror game called Dead by Daylight. Recently, IGN did a little interview with some of the production team behind it, talking about how they began as a game with their own IP characters, but then they grew in popularity so much that they were able to actually draw upon licensed properties, you know, your classic horror figures, starting with Michael Myers from the Halloween movie, Scream Face, and I think Bubba, is that his character's name, from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Most recently, of course, they've just secured the licensing rights for Chucky from the Chucky horror series. They've got Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. Anyway, what I want to do is play a little bit of that interview with IGN and the production team of Dead by Daylight as they unpack what were their thoughts as they were taking these classic IP characters and taking them into the game. The game is a competitive co-op game, so you can play as survivors, or you can play as the iconic villain, you know, the Freddy Krueger character or others. So we're going to look at how they developed that idea, and we're going to pause it and unpack some of the points that are brought up in it. So here is a little bit of the interview from IGN on the Dead by Daylight developers and their ideas around it.
inspired by the horror archetypes of the 80s golden age of slasher cinema. As the game quickly grew in popularity, developer Behaviour kickstarted an ambitious plan to see if they could bring together horror's most iconic villains under its umbrella. It set out to do for horror what Fortnite did for pop culture, creating a terrifying metaverse unlike any other. But doing so had its challenges.
Should we use the rocket launcher in the Mori?
We don't want to put kids on a meat hook.
We spoke to the creative minds behind Dead by Daylight to get to the bloody heart of how they overcame such challenges and, over the following years, summoned horror's most iconic villains into the game.
So it was just a bit of a setup there as they're unpacking the idea of how they went about doing this. So then we go into the interview, which we'll hear a bit from now.
Behaviour didn't begin Dead by Daylight with a cast of recognizable faces. Before Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers, the studio launched the multiplayer survival horror game with 4 original killers and 5 survivors that were created in-house but designed to evoke the style of the iconic 80s horror golden age.
So it's really interesting that they started the game without securing any licensed characters, but the monsters, villains they did put in them were evoking and in the spirit of, in the style of, recognizable, I guess, in terms of the vibe, aesthetics of classic contemporary horror villains. So there's a short soundbite here where he talks about, one of the developers talks about what their initial motivations were with those characters they created themselves and how it was evoking specific models of cinema, of villains, of horror villains in cinema.
First originals, these guys up there, were really inspired by obviously the classics of the horror world, the slasher movies of the 70s and the 80s. So for us, it was always sort of part of the DNA of what we were building.
The meticulous designs of Dead by Daylight's original characters spoke to the admiration the developers had for the evil movie creatures of that era. Importantly, they were a hit with those playing that game, and the developers were flooded with fan art and fan fiction, all based on these original characters.
So it's interesting to hear that participation idea, of course, really key concept that fans, that you want to create a media text which fans can engage with, they can participate in. So it's interesting in that article that the journalist refers to, a games journalist refers to the fan art that started to emerge around those original characters that were in the series, that clearly the fans were getting it, it was evoking that connection, and they were very interested to participate in that space with fan art and other spaces.
Made by loyal fans hooked on the lore created by Behaviour. As Dead by Daylight's popularity began to grow, Behaviour was finally in a position to take a stab at a very special collaboration it had been eyeing for a long time.
We were able to leverage some of the long-standing relationships we have with a lot of licensors out there, and secure the rights to Halloween. So the very original Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, and that was the first foray into sort of that licensing world that we did in DVD.
So that's really interesting. Again, the idea that, okay, so they're developing this game where the principle is you've got survivors and a horror villain in the mold of your classic slasher films like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and so forth. But they began with original characters that kind of evoked that movie world, where players could play as some of the survivors trying to hide and defeat the monster, or the monster, the horror monster that was trying to prey upon and kill those survivors. So through that success, and I guess as they developed that kind of adaptation of the genre, that slasher genre, and they made connections with people that were holders of the classics that inspired them, they're then able to secure the license rights for what many people regard as one of the ground zero, one of the mothership texts for the slasher genre, John Carpenter's Halloween, and get that kind of classic shape, the body, with the painted white William Shatner mask and the blue denim overalls and that knife. So again, the idea that they're in conversation with these adaptations, but you can see the idea of adaptation going through 2 levels there already. The first level is they're adapting the genre, but not specific IP texts or stories. They're not literally adapting Halloween into a game, but they are drawing upon the broad aesthetics, genre, tropes, conventions of slasher films and kind of horror stalking films. And then they move into that next stage of adaptation, which is actually licensing goods. Now, the interesting thing here is would this be what Henry Jenkins would refer to as transmedia storytelling, where it's taking one medium's text, in that case, the Halloween movie, the Mothership, the original text being the John Carpenter early 80s film, Halloween, and specifically the Michael Myers killer, and they licensed also Laurie Stern, one of the survivors, the main survivor, actually, from the first film on. And so those 2 characters, do they do storytelling within that, or is it just a kind of spin-off text? Does it extend? Does it pick up from the original text in terms of its story? So you could think of The Matrix, for instance. You had that first film, then you had the Enter the Matrix video game, which picked up some ideas about the crew of the Nebulusca, or whatever it's called, the Nebulusca. And that story only existed in the video game, and for those that played the video games, they had a little bit of background knowledge when the second movie came out, and the Nebuchadnezzar, I'm so close, was mentioned. Anyway, going back to Dead by Daylight interview, let's hear what they're unpacking next.
Which was great.
Getting Michael Myers was a huge coup. Both Behaviour and the fans loved the collaboration, and crucially, it opened the door for even more crossovers. While it began with Michael Myers, Behaviour wasn't content to stop there. The studio branched out quickly, scooping all of the big 80s horror franchises like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Nightmare on Elm Street. But with the pantheon of classics complete, Behaviour looked towards the modern hits next. One of the earliest collaborations was between Behaviour Interactive and Lionsgate for the film series Saw, though maybe not the character you might expect.
So now they're moving, of course, from almost generations of horror game adaptations. So classic 80s texts that they started adapting, so starting with Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, films that were part of that first batch, establishing some of those key tropes of the horror villain antagonist and the victim survivor protagonist. Then it's interesting. Here they kind of, I think, are delivered a much more complex challenge of how they adapt into this video game world they've created, where you're playing as one of the villains or one of the survivors in this kind of open world, battle royale space. It's the Saw film. So again, skipping ahead now to a next generation in the late 90s of video game horror. So this raises a really interesting point for us to think of: what character would fit a survival horror game where you're playing as the survivors or the horror killer? If you take the text Saw, what would you presume as being the villain that people would want to pay for the DLC character for? It's surprising their answer. Let's hear how the interview goes on as they talk about the Saw franchise being adapted into the Dead by Daylight video game.
I think the obvious answer for most people was Jigsaw, right? And he should have been the killer. And we didn't think so.
Instead, Behaviour chose Amanda Young, John Kramer's apprentice from the Saw films, or the Pig as she's known in Dead by Daylight.
So interestingly, they didn't choose Jigsaw, which is the kind of iconic mastermind killer in the Saw franchise. They instead chose a kind of side character, the side kind of kick villain, Amanda, particularly the costume she has of the kind of pig face costume she puts on. It's really fascinating to understand why that is. And I think this goes to the heart of when you're creating an adaptation of a work from one genre to another genre, you're wanting to make sure you're taking advantages of the platform. Now, what is it about the video game platform which meant, and specifically within the video game platform, a kind of open world survival game like Dead by Daylight? What is it about that platform of video game mechanics in Dead by Daylight which meant Jigsaw didn't make sense, and a side villain, Amanda, made better sense in terms of how it fitted within the mechanics of the video game and so forth? So let's jump back into the interview and listen to that.
Jigsaw wants to test people to essentially give them back their will to live, or the appreciation for how precious life is, which is almost a noble goal. Whereas Amanda cheats. Amanda wants people to suffer and wants people to die, and doesn't play the game fair, which made her a great prospect, a great candidate to be a killer, right? Because she's bad. She's a really bad person. And plus, it was kind of a nice little way to surprise people by bringing an interesting character that is very core to the Saw, but that fit better within our universe.
Behaviour didn't want to just add a famous character for the sake of it, but wanted to incorporate a horror franchise in a way that made sense for both Dead by Daylight and Saw. Amanda was a more natural fit, as her film counterpart was a true sadist compared to John Kramer's more philosophical teacher. Plus,
So again, just unpacking video game adaptations, and joined by my wonderful co-host, Lord Taylor.
Yep, I'm wonderful.
And of course, we are streaming on YouTube, so to help the people see Lord Taylor on the YouTube, you might want to shuffle to your left. Yeah, that's perfect.
Bang.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So again, of course, we're streaming on YouTube and Twitch, as well as on the FM system, analog. And I've set it up talking about video game adaptations, and basically we're going through an interview with the Dead by Daylight creators. Do you know the Dead by Daylight game?
I do know of it, and I've seen people play it, but I've never played it myself. But it seems pretty good.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is this interview where they're breaking down the challenges they faced when they were adapting particular characters into the game. So at the moment, we've talked about how they went through a kind of 3 phases of adaptation so far. First phase is adapting the genre of the slasher film. So they had original characters, no IP goods, but people could kind of guess the tropes that each one of the killers they had was evoking. So they were adapting the style, genre, and tropes of the slasher film. And then they secured the license for that first generation of slasher film icons.
Yeah,
so
Spider-Man.
You're horrible. No, not Spider-Man. That would be a great mod. It'd be a weird mod. Multiverse type mod. No. So Michael Myers from Halloween, Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think the character's name's Bubba from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then they were presented this challenge of then adapting the next generation of horror stalker violent films. Particularly, they started with the Saw franchise, and they were saying that they didn't choose to do the Jigsaw character because the motivations just didn't fit with the type of game they were creating in Dead by Daylight. Jigsaw's character is almost a kind of benevolent figure in terms of wanting to make the victims that he's punishing overcome, well, maybe not overcome, but certainly recognize their faults and maybe overcome them, but it's a much more kind of, torturous. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so instead of choosing that character, they chose a kind of side character that's a kind of trainee killer linked to Jigsaw called Amanda, and the pig face costume she wears, because Amanda is a much more straightforward, sadistic killer that just wants to punish and kill, which fits more into an open world survival game. I don't know. So they're breaking down this, so we're going to pick up listening now to their next franchise, or they're just going to finish talking about Saw and then the next franchise and how they adapted that.
Us choosing Amanda meant that as part of Amanda's kit, she's able to put survivors in the trap that she herself survived, the reverse bear trap.
Yeah, it's the most iconic trap.
Do you know the reverse bear trap?
Well, I know what a bear trap is.
Yeah, so for feet, right? The bear walks in it, and it's this clamp thing.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bear trap, right? Clamps over the feet as the reverse bear trap is that one, you've probably seen pictures of it, the guy that has this kind of bear trap on his head.
No, I've not seen that.
you would. It's this kind of clasp thing over his head with this. Anyway, reverse bear trap. So what's interesting here is, again, they're doing this adaptation, not necessarily, it's more of a spin-off, I guess, where they're taking tropes and visual icons from Saw. It's a type of storytelling, I guess. It's that moment where you've got victims and they're running away. But there's not really much to the story. Nevertheless, they are adapting key moments that fit with this platform of video games, like the iconic torture devices. And also within this, I guess we can ask, if you were to create a game like this, what would be on your shopping list for villains to put in it? And part of that question we're hearing in this interview, is that it also has to have weapons that work within the game mechanics. And
so have you played it before?
I've literally played like the opening 10 seconds. And then I thought, I've got to do my homework before I start playing this game. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I have got it.
So is it just like an open world survivor game and these people are trying to catch you, or is it more story driven?
It's a very minimal story. It's more of a open world game, a small kind of, I guess, hunt zone that you're in, kill zone.
Multiplayer?
Yeah. And the multiplayer is split between only one player can be the killer.
Right, okay.
And then the rest of the players are survivors. You can co-op as survivors, so you can be on team chat and so forth. But the killer is a non-co-op character, of course, right? You can't be on a chat with others saying, okay, let's min-max this. So yeah. But it's really, really popular, and it's... just recently have announced they've secured, and you can get the Chucky character in this game. Before that, they had the Alien one, which they'll get around to. So, so it's interesting here they're talking about the weapons, so let's pick up now.
I think people will think about when thinking about Saw. There's a lot of great other traps, but they're not as practical as the reverse bear trap 2. Being able to move around with this on your head and having the pressure to go play that game and to get out was a perfect fit for our rules as well in the game.
Yeah, so he's talking there about how not only does it need to be iconic and sellable, also the weapons linked to that character needs to be able to work within the mechanics of the game, right? So they're saying, okay, we're going to go reverse bear trap and other ones, but not all of them, because they just won't work as weapons in the game.
Yeah.
The Saw collaboration proved that Behaviour was capable of rewriting the horror canon to its will, subverting expectations by focusing on Amanda Young rather than John Kramer, and taking the reins of a franchise with the blessings of the license holder. However, integrating other characters wasn't always that simple. The rights to some horror franchise are tied up in all sorts of limbo. In Scream, for example, Ghostface's iconic look is actually owned by the original toy company that created the mask, Funworld, rather than the movie studio behind the films. And so, to get the iconic visage, Behaviour reached out directly to Funworld.
They were super excited, and as long as we created...
So that's interesting in terms of the IP ownership of properties, that the Saw mask wasn't owned by the Saw franchise, it was owned by the manufacturers of that Halloween mask, the famous ghost mask. So when they were licensing it, looking to bring that into the game, they were negotiating with the costume manufacturers of the mask, not the franchisees owners of the cinema franchise.
Yeah.
Scream.
Scream.
Other S1. And it's interesting, here they talk about what the caveats that meant were, because obviously if you're not dealing with the cinema story of Scream, you're not adapting the story of Scream, the other characters, the other victims and so forth, and the DNA of that script. Instead, you're literally just dealing with the iconography of the Scream character.
A brand new character that wore that mask. They were happy to collaborate with us.
With the license to Ghostface's iconic look secured, Behaviour had the fun task of creating an original killer to hide behind the mask. Although it didn't have the rights to the movie, it actually worked in the developer's favor because Ghostface's identity changes each time. As such, Behaviour was able to give its own spin on creating a new killer, a freelance journalist named Danny Johnson.
It was a perfect fit for us. The costume is more important than the person underneath. So it was a great opportunity for us to create that original character. And what was important for us to recreate those that even though it's always somebody different under the costume, there's some element of the Ghostface persona that is always kind of the same from character to character. We wanted to recreate these cool moments from the different stories that we've seen in the past, that very tongue-in-cheek, using comedy in the...
Freelance journalist, I told you it was Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, you don't know who's wearing the mask, I guess. Because it's interesting here, yeah. So they're talking a little bit about the story, right? So that kind of tongue-in-cheek character of the movie, Scream, but they're not adapting the actor or the character, sorry, from that Scream franchise that wore that mask,
It's
right?
just the look.
Yeah, just the look, and underneath that look is the game designer's own creation. But because it's that iconic mask that it's wearing, and the licensing is through that manufacturer of the mask rather than the movie franchise. I'm trying to remember the director, Wes Craven story. It means that they're kind of in this grey zone where it's like, well, it acts like the character from the Scream movies, but they've got to be careful that they're not actually ripping off that, because then they'd have to license it via that as well. So very interesting. Then they will talk about the next franchise they're adapting.
Horrible things that Ghostface is doing.
Indeed, a lot of the humor for Ghostface appears in the description for his ability add-ons, whether it's his camera Philly or an add-on called Cheap Cologne that makes his presence known to survivors while at the same time marking them. Furthermore, Ghostface is able to lean around corners, which makes any encounter with him terrifying, if a little ridiculous.
So, Ghostface's key iconic tropes are a camera, and in the game you can take a selfie of yourself with the victim you're about to kill them, and this cologne, right? Again, going into this trope that typically in the movies he's this, bro alpha dude sometimes. So again, that idea that he's got this cheap, noticeable male cologne as part of his trope, his character DNA. That's kind of, I guess, away enough from the script, but aligned enough with the mask and what people know of it.
So do you ever see the character in the movie?
Oh, yeah. Well, at the end of the movie, it's kind of a Scooby-Doo ending for these movies, where it's like the big reveal of who the killer really is underneath the mask. So you always see it, and it's always a twist, and it always pays off in terms of the story. But it's interesting here, the Dead by Daylight game, of course, they're not licensing and adapting that story. So, and again, they said, part of the deal was it's the mask, and within the mask,
is Spider-Man.
Is anyone like Peter Parker? Surprise, surprise. That would be a twist. It would be a twist. Okay, the next genre they're talking about adapting is a video game. So this one is a video game that they adapted into another video game.
Wow.
So instead of movie to video game, it's video game to video game.
That's very Fortnite, isn't it?
We're going to get around to that, hopefully. 436. We might, again, we'll see how long this takes, and we might do part 3 of the adaptation series of this text, because I want to leave a little bit of time to go over some news.
While Behaviour featured guest characters from another video game in 2017, when Left 4 Dead's Bill made it into Dead by Daylight, 2020's Silent Hill chapter was a full-blown collaboration that brought the killer Pyramid Head and survivor Cheryl Mason to the game.
If there's one license that I was obsessed with, it was Silent Hill.
So Silent Hill. So they're adapting Silent Hill, and particularly the character of Pyramid Head, a kind of iconic... Have you played Silent Hill?
No. I've never watched nor played any horror games.
Oh, wow. You could be a neutral observer.
Yes.
I played those games many times, and it really struck my heart and my imagination. So being able to give a chance for these characters to be alive again in a video game, and especially to be able to control Pyramid Head, a character that you were not able to control before, was an amazing experience.
But Silent Hill being what it is, the collaboration wouldn't have been complete without incorporating the iconic location of the title, which Behaviour incorporated into the DLC as a special map, with an acute attention to detail.
It was non-negotiable.
So it's interesting. Yes, here they're adapting location as well as characters. So again, one thing that, locations have come up in all the DLC they've done. The setting for the Halloween one, for instance, is similar, very similar to the setting from the Halloween film, that everyday suburban Americana. But here, particularly in Saw, they paid particular attention to the location that you've not played.
Yeah, or seen.
Negotiable. Like, we would not have done Silent Hill without Silent Hill, right?
Yeah, usually when we go for a chapter, we want to be able to feature as much as we can. And Silent Hill is a very rich universe, and yes, it's Silent Hill. It's a place. The place is very important. So having the map in there was, like you say, Matt, non-negotiable.
Over the years, Silent Hill has had many different incarnations. In the earliest games, Silent Hill's otherworld was something that just happened. You'd be in a normal version of the town one moment, step through a door, and come out the other side into the nightmare realm. In later games, Silent Hill changed in real time, an effect that was borrowed for the live-action film adaptations. Behavior's take involved a Silent Hill that was both normal and nightmarish at the same time.
I think that in the early days of the level design of this,
I just want to pause it there because it is interesting to hear that. Here you have this multiple adaptation moment where they began adapting their adaptations around the video game series, and in particular this idea of when this nightmare realm comes into play and not. And then they refer later here. I've not played the Silent Hill adaptation for Dead by Daylight, but it's interesting to hear them say that. Then the movie. They later on started adapting the idea of this nightmare room presented in the movie.
Yeah.
Where it bleeds into the everyday as well. So yeah, interesting that kind of, where the meaning of the text is. That at this point, what is Silent Hill and how is the nightmare realm in Silent Hill demonstrated is kind of fluid, right? Well, do you mean the movie version, the video game version, and so forth? And it seems like Dead by Daylight decided to have it both ways.
Yeah.
This map, we wanted to go through a narrative so that the level would actually change, and so that there's some actions that you'd be able to do that would change the level to the dark world and maybe back. That sadly was just out of scope, something that we couldn't do at a time. So the best other thing that we could do is to make these two worlds live side by side. And in our universe, that makes sense. It's all recreated out of the memories, and it's a nightmare of this place. So both can coexist. We've also implemented that secret gameplay, right? That you can discover, make the clock bell ring and discover the secret, and that was also another way to show a bit of transformation, or to wink at the original transformation that we see in Silent Hill.
For Silent Hill, the location was just as important as the character's behavior set to incorporate into Dead by Daylight. But for the studio's other video game collaboration...
We'll pause it there. So again, really interesting to hear about how location was central for Silent Hill. And I'll leave the discussion there. So we've had a number of key points around adaptation that's been raised, not only in terms of how significant character was, so getting the licensing for the specific character, but then also the weapons and so forth, and location in the case of Silent Hill. Now I want to... Oh, I don't have that queued up. Music cue. Great. Shift gears to talk a little bit about news. Zack Snyder plays too much Fortnite, staying up until 3 a.m. This is great because my kids are totally too obsessed with Fortnite at the moment. They're cranking 90s, and they're full of complaining about the sweats they play against, and they're trying to be goats.
Yeah.
All these and more language terms I'm learning. Anyway, it was weird to hear that Zack Snyder does it. It's a short clip that I'll play now.
Who is it?
Zack Snyder, of course, is the director of many, many films, including the Transformers films, Justice League, so Batman.
He's a bad director then.
No, he's a high concept director, very stylistic. We want to keep his fandom on side.
Okay.
Anyway, here he was interviewed again by IGN, where this big reveal leapt out, which has been his Fortnite gaming. Oh.
Yep. I'm ready for it.
Yep. Yeah.
Just talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. No, I remember. I've got it playing through this computer. And here we go.
My son and I got into Fortnite. I kind of wanted to play it with him, and then he didn't like it, and so I ended up just playing it by myself. I went down a bad rabbit hole with Fortnite in the sense that I took a pretty deep dive.
Are you build?
Way
No
deeper
build?
than... No build.
No build.
No build.
And what's your skin?
I was Minxie's from Rick and Morty. My son and I got into Fortnite.
Mr. Meeseeks from Rick and Morty. Yeah, so it's fun. Actually, it's interesting, isn't it? He wanted to start by playing with his kids, and his son didn't get into it, and he did, and he just...
And he plays no build, which is the better
What is no build? I don't know.
So in build mode, that's where you see people and they all like flip around making the structures. In no build, you can't build
cranking
any...
90s.
You can't build any structures.
Right. So you can't crank 90s.
I don't know what that means.
My daughter was showing me. It's where you're kind of building a structure straight up.
And
you kind of jump a bit and you build a kind of ramp or something, and you jump a bit more, like to a 90-degree jump.
Walls,
and build,
ramp, walls,
walls,
ramp.
All right, no build gameplay. And he played Mr. Meeseeks.
Yeah, well, he's got my respect back again.
I think the thing that really stood out for me, of course, is at beginning as a father-son bonding.
And then there's no bonding at the end of it.
No bonding, but he really gets into it and plays. I would love to do field research now in Fortnite, trying to find, I'm sure like everyone else at the moment, Zack Snyder. In game. Like, do you know where Zack Snyder is? As I'm playing in chat. Anyone got clues where Zack Snyder is? And I'd be doing it as like, hi, I'm Craig Norris from Mothership. Trying to interview Zack Snyder in game. And die constantly.
Probably, yes.
So there you go. Next news story is sentimental Skyrim players booting up Xbox 360s and PS3s. So that's 2 generations ago.
Oh yeah, I saw this.
To retire original characters.
Yeah.
You a Skyrim player?
Absolutely.
Great.
I'm playing it through now.
Wow.
As we speak.
So do you know this phenomenon? It
Yes.
came from a Reddit post in the story they're talking about. What's your story of retiring characters? What is this?
Well, I have never personally done it and will never do it, but it's people that have like grown up with Skyrim and they've played it all throughout their teen years and then decided to retire their character and when they come back 10, 20 years later and give them a nice home, give them like a carrot plantation out the front of their houses and then give them nice clothes and put them to bed and then close the game forever.
Yeah, it's such a cute... So the article talks about how this guy on Reddit posted this story saying, he suddenly had this desire to boot up this game again that he'd played constantly, whenever it launched. How long ago was that? 5 years ago?
It's a bit longer than 5 years.
Really?
It's either 10 or
10,
20, but
right.
I think it's probably 10.
So, in Reddit he was posting, he spent so much of his college years doing this and his first job, and he realized that he'd never kind of closed it, right? How do you end that game?
Because it is a constant... It never ends. You can never finish... Well, you can finish the game like through the storyline, but then you just, after the credits roll, you come back again, and you can infinitely clear out dungeons and kill bandits.
Because there's never a kind of screen that pops up and says, the end. Well done.
Well, there kind of is. You can end off the story, but you can never fully 100% complete the game because people will always keep on respawning. The dungeons will always respawn.
Yes.
There'll always be something to do.
So in the Reddit post, the guy was saying... so he booted up the Xbox 360 and put the best clothes for his characters on.
Emperor's clothes.
And he, took one last look around this field that he had and put the character to bed and then shut the game down. And that sense of finality, that sense of closure, that sense of like wanting a story of end. Mm-hmm. Almost like Thanos, Thanos at the end, right? Like he wanted the snap, did the adventure, and then we have the next movie where we see, okay, he's just chilling out, on that farm. And so, you want that sense of closure. It's really, such a human desire. And also it's interesting because it raises that question of how do you end these procedurally generated, constantly in motion games?
The answer is you don't. And that's what mods are for. You always just get mods and play a completely different game.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah. So, but again, you don't have time to play everything. So it's interesting when you say, okay, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption 2, or I want to get around to the next big Baldur's Gate 3 to do those sex
just
speed runs.
Just Skyrim.
Well, I agree. I mean, you think that really there's enough depth in that game that you can conceivably not buy games.
Exactly.
Right? They can be your game. Which sounds like what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Wow. And what are you doing at the moment in the game?
I'm trying to 100% complete everything, because I've never done that before. Complete all of the storyline, and it's really difficult because I've got it on Switch, and so there's no mods that I can put in there. There's no what's it called? Console commands or anything like that, and it's a really, really buggy, broken game. So I'm just crossing my fingers that there won't come up a time where I won't be able to progress through the game because it's broken.
It sounds like Reddit post material there, if it does happen, regardless. Are you documenting it?
No.
Oh, wow. Maybe we can document it on this game. Radio show. Are we in a game?
This isn't a VR game.
I'm not playing a game. I'm trying to unlock my game. Media Mothership.
Edge Radio VR.
So, what's your? Have you got a project management thing? Have you set a timeline for this or?
Not specifically. I'm just trying to get all of the good weapons in the game, so even if it's like making choices that I wouldn't normally make, like killing a particular character that I actually like, I'll do it just so I can get the special reward at the end of it, because I'm trying to get amass everything that I can.
Right.
Collector.
And is that in Switch? They have that kind of completionist reward thing that ticks over, or like I know the PlayStation has trophies and the Steam game has achievements.
I don't know if it will do that. Nothing's popped up while I've been playing.
So how are you tracking the completion narrative? Is it just in game? There's things that said you are X%.
Yeah, and I know all of like the Daedric princes that I need to go and kill people for. So
because you've played it through already on another platform.
Yeah, I've played it through on PC. I've played it through on PS3. I've played it through on PS4.
Really? Yeah. And by play it through, you've completed the story mode.
I've never completed the story mode.
Right. So how far did you get through on those platforms? Like you got through far enough to feel.
I became the strongest character in the game.
Right.
I level 100.
Is it co-op or is it just single player?
Single player.
And there's no co-op?
No.
Wow.
There is mods to make co-op, but it's very buggy, very, very buggy.
Right. I know there's Skyrim VR and the PC.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's this incredibly vibrant mod space as well. Right. What percent are you at the moment?
I've done quite a fair few. I've done a lot. I've spent like 40 hours on it so far.
I do want to document this, research you, observe you. How many hours a day, right? So what's your, it's a job, really?
Yeah.
I don't mean to put it that way. But I'm thinking it's a routine that you've got to stick to. So
4 hours, I'd say.
Mornings, afternoons, evenings?
Afternoons, and then just before sleep.
Right. I'm going to get a whole set of questions going in the future. That's great. We'll check in. What's your character's name?
Just my name.
Okay. Lord Taylor.
yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. I'm trying to think if we've got time to do the next thing.
Of course you do.
Yeah, all right. Well, it's been an on-running story for the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The Baldur's Gate 3 players speedrunning companion romances.
Yep.
There's another story on it on GameSpot now. Developed Larian Studios has hired an intimacy coordinator to ensure the game's romance scenes were top-notch. An intimacy coordinator. So part of the game development staff included an intimacy coordinator. Because it's been amazing to me. I mean, it's not playing Baldur's Gate 3, that the stories that are coming out around the speedruns to get companionship. And I want to play, there's this great clip of the voice actress for one of the characters.
Commenting on
it. So here's her opinion on hearing about particularly the sex speedrunners that are looking to court and character. Lazel, the character's name in the Baldur's Gate 3, Lazel reacts to sex speedruns.
It's come to my attention that some of you are having competitions to see who can romance the characters the fastest. Skva! I, Lazel of Kreshkalir, condemn this behaviour. For what is romance without intimacy? And what is true romance without, dare I say it, love? You might think that you are being all clever and interesting by doing these speed romance runs, but let me tell you, that is not how you will win my respect. And once you have lost my respect once, you have lost it forever. So, do what you like. I shall not influence your choices, but remember what I said. And if you want to keep me around in your party and remain in my good books, then I sincerely hope you consider your path to romancing me very carefully in the future. That is all. So, that's all I have to say. Goodbye from Lazel of Kreshkalir.
Right.
And that was the actress, and she wasn't in character.
Obviously not. That odd sound effects throughout. It is reading the comments. It's interesting to hear some people kind of unpack it in the spirit. I guess she delivered it as well in character, and saying how, well, actually in the game, her character is not into love; they're carnal pleasures. So I'm confused. It's like, well, commentary's probably engaged with a broader discourse around romance. But yeah, so fascinating. So not only do we have an intimacy coordinator, but now some of the key voice actors, particularly that have been voiced characters that are part of these speedruns. And it's worth watching. I was watching some of the speedruns. They're really unsatisfying to watch, right? Particularly, the narrative of romance and so forth. It's just clipping out. Well, not clipping. It's just kind of quick resolving all the dialogue wheels, speeding into somewhere, speeding through dialogue, and allegedly, a lot of these posts are like, new world record.
Yeah, it's just people with too much time again, isn't it?
Says the Skyrim completionist hobbyist. Well, look, it's 5 to the hour, so Media Mothership for another week I'm going to call. It's been a great journey, I feel. I've quite enjoyed unpacking some of the adaptation issues around Dead by Daylight. We'll be picking that up on, not next week, but the week after. That will be the last live show for Media Mothership.
Ever.
Well, no. For this year, at least, certainly. But I think our lives continue after then to perform it live. And so we'll pick it up at that episode. Next week's episode will be a classic episode from the archives that I'll put in to the system. What's coming up on K-Pop Unlimited next?
Great music.
Is it best of hits?
No, it's just good music.
Good music. From Korea.
Yeah, and one from the United States of America.
All right. But
Black Eyed Peas.
Oh, wow. Is that K-pop adjacent?
No.
Okay. Wow. Confusion abounds. So listen up next to K-Pop Unlimited. So thanks for listening again to Media Mothership on Edge Radio. Show notes are going to be available on the episode description on YouTube or your podcast supplier. You can listen to previous episodes on YouTube and Twitch and at edgeradio.org.au. You can find out more about Dr. Craig and Lord Taylor on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, and there's little bits of me on Snapchat from a few years ago. Not Snapchat, TikTok.
There we go.
And
Snapchat.
Discord, we have a Discord page. So do check those out. And again, keep listening to Edge Radio, as coming up next is K-Pop Unlimited.